Back in college, I did a little bit of, I wrote a little bit. And I wrote this one recently, but I grew up on a dairy farm. And growing up on a dairy farm provided a lot of rich experience for short stories. And I wrote this one 2 weeks ago about, it's a true story. And I always have believed that the best kind of, if you will, the engine for great writing really comes from your own life experiences. And this is something that really happened. It's called Summer Storms and Angry Gods. When I was a child, summer storms would roll across the open fields and hit our farm with ferocious might. The worst ones always seemed to come in the dead of night. We didn't have air conditioning in my house, so I would be in my bed listening to the rumble of distant thunder and shiver when the electric bolts of lightning would suddenly highlight in a flash everything in my room. The wind would bring smells of the fields through my open windows, the sweet smell of ripening corn, the rich earthiness of cut hay, the metallic odor of recently plowed earth. My room faced our gravel driveway, and even in the storms, my windows remained cracked open to take advantage of the coolness brought by the rain. Storms sometimes spooked our cows, who were out at pasture overnight in the summer. Something would set them off, and the entire herd of lumbering, terrified cattle would run full speed in a single file right through the barbed wire electric fence. More often than not, they would break through the fence and stop soon after, eating grass and waiting for my father and me to come and bring them back to the barn. Sometimes the sheriff would come and tell us that our cows were out on the road or in a cornfield or wandering around in our yard. I would hear the police car pull off the road and crackle on the stone driveway below my windows. I would hear the police radio, muted and muffled, voices incoherent. A door would open, slam shut, and then the loud, heavy knock on our front door. Rap, rap, rap. My father would head downstairs in his undershirt and khaki, filthy work pants. I would try to bury myself in some unknown recess of my bed, knowing that I would soon have to get up and go out in the storm to retrieve the wayward cows. In those times, my stoic father would say almost nothing. We would dress and walk out in the pouring rain, our bodies leaning and bent together in the stiff wind. We found the main herd easily enough, rain pelting down, wind whipping my jacket, the strange landscapes revealed in the blinding flashes of lightning. I remember my heart beating so hard I would hear it in my ears, adrenaline flowing through my veins as I picked my way through weeds and bushes and rocks to chase down a wayward young cow, a heifer, still frightened from the storm. My father had taught me how to place my hand on the back of the terrified cow and say softly, "Sobas, sobas, sobas." Back in the barn, we fed the cows some fresh hay to calm them down. We realized that one of the cows was still missing. My father decided that I would be the one to find it and bring it home, all 10 years old of me. One cow leaves deep ruts when it walks through wet, muddy soil. 75 cows leave unmistakable and unavoidable holes that seemingly could swallow children whole. With the rain still falling hard, and the wind still blowing from the west, I conjured up all the courage my 10-year-old self could muster, and armed with a flashlight and wire cutter, I left the relative warmth and light of the barn and headed out to the break in the fence to find the missing cow. Not far from the break in the fence, I found one set of hoof prints that broke off from the main herd, and I followed them through a narrow band of trees towards a brand new housing complex built near our farm. Immediately, I began to nervously worry that the cow ran all the way to the subdivision, where I would have to try to corral it through people's yards and driveways. My head began to spin with the endless possibilities for disaster. Dogs barking, alarmed suburbanites panicking at the sight of a dairy cow running amok through their yard. In my head, I began to think of ways to avoid this inevitable embarrassment. I resented my father for making me retrieve the cow. I resented the cow for breaking off from the rest of the herd. I resented the people who built new homes so close to our farm. I resented my life for being so weird. I mean, really, when our teacher asked us how we spent our summer vacation, how would I even begin to explain this? Sure enough, as I stumbled through the last of the tree line, I saw that the cow's trail indeed crossed the main road that led to the housing development. The first light of dawn was beginning to transition the black of night into a wet gray morning. The lightning and thunder had now moved east, but a driving wind, whipped rain continued to soak me from head to toe. My mind reeled with panic. I wanted so desperately to find that cow before people awoke and began leaving for work. I didn't want to be seen. The cow left a wake of disaster through the neighborhood. The heavy rain made everything soft, so the sharp hooves and incredible weight of the wayward cow tore up the newly laid sod of brand new homes. Flower beds were utterly destroyed, driveways muddied, yarn ornaments crushed, the trinkets and adornments of modern suburban living wrecked by a terrified and disoriented, hulking animal. And then the tracks disappeared into a scene that could only be described as utterly, totally inconceivable. The tracks tore up sod in the front yard of a ranch-style home, I remember it, and then suddenly turned and left a gaping hole in a high wooden fence that enclosed the home's backyard. As I followed the trail around the side of the home and towards the broken wooden yard fence, my brain began to process images that were flashing through my line of vision. Cow tracks across concrete. Cow tracks that disappeared into a huge in-ground swimming pool in the backyard. A giant dairy cow floating. A giant dairy cow floating upside down in the pool. A giant dairy cow floating upside down in the pool, already bloated and drowned and dead, and oh my Lord, it's dead, and it's the people's new pool and dead and bloated, and it's not going to get out of there, and we're going to have to tell these people that there is a cow in their pool, and oh no, and why is this happening, and why is there no justice in this world, and why is my dad telling me to do this, and why am I here, and why do I even exist in such a cruel and unjust world? I wish I could tell you everything was handled in a calm manner. I wish I could say that people were fine with the enormous, bloated, broken-necked animal floating in their newly constructed American dream pool. They were not. Not at all, my friends. Much of what happened that morning afterwards is still a blur. I will provide you with a snapshot synopsis. I ran home as fast as I could and tried to explain breathlessly what I had seen to my wordless, stoic father. We drove back to the house in silence in our old Ford pickup truck. I don't think my dad believed me. I was sent home to get our largest tractor and some chain to pull the cow out of the pool. The tractor woke up the entire neighborhood, and I promptly got it stuck in the people's muddy front yard. A tow truck had to be called to fish out the tractor. It, too, got stuck. People began to arrive on the scene. Some gasped. Some covered their mouths. Some shook their heads back and forth over and over and over and over. Oh, and the owners of that home, the man in the house kept saying the name of the Lord's Son over and over again repeatedly. And at some point in the morning, I distinctly remember him threatening to punch my father. His wife shrieked and fainted into a lawn chair. They had kids. I simply remember them staring blankly, silently at the pool in total disbelief. When the dead floating cow was pulled out of the pool, it snagged on the diving board and it exploded. Note to 10-year-old self, dead animals fill up with gas when they die and are easily penetrable. The cow exploded, my friends, everywhere. A giant semi-truck arrived later in the morning to haul away the carcass. It was loaded with dead animals, and it completely enveloped the entire neighborhood in the stench of death. I grew up on a dairy farm, friends. It was a strange existence indeed. In the old days, before science explained things, in the ancient days, people used to believe that storms at night were the angry outbursts of the gods themselves. Maybe, my friends, maybe they were right. I thank you very much.